Welcome to FNF Victory Road Draft League Team Analysis. In this series, I'm going to be analyzing teams that have participated in the Draft League, looking over their history in the Draft League, including their matches, their teams, and their exchanges. So without further ado, let's jump into this. This is going to be the last regular season exclusive team that I review before going into the playoff teams, and this is the Canopy Defenders, which was led by Edgar. And so let's take a look at that initial team. Whoops, going a little too fast there. Let's take a look at that initial team. Before we go into the initial team, the logo is actually from Skullgirls, which is a game that Edgar really enjoys playing and is very good at, might I add. He has a bunch of really cool combo vids up on YouTube, so if you ask him for that, he could probably deliver more than a lot of really cool combo vids. So let's take a look at the initial team that Canopy Defenders drafted. So Edgar was my first snipe in the Pokemon draft, going for Garchomp. I do know that Edgar really enjoys Garchomp, and I'm glad that he was able to get it because I think Edgar did use Generog the Garchomp pretty effectively. And overall, I think Edgar, much like myself, kind of went for some of the Pokemon that he enjoys in general in the Pokemon drafting process. I think that he applied that in the Dark types he chose as well. He did get the most Dark types, I believe, out of any team, having 3, which is Crocodile, Umbreon, and Houndoom. And he also did get a couple of dragons as well. So I think his philosophy was going into it that he wanted to have that strong but also can take a hit Pokemon. Garchomp is definitely one of those. Mega Charizard X is also one of those, deceptively bulky and very good typing. So he did run Roost with Dragon Dance many times because oftentimes Charizard was able to take a hit and then roost off some of the damage. So he went for that. Garchomp, Crocodile, and Registeel were his stealth rockers, and with those he was able to find some utility because each one of those has a different function than the other, but they all have that thing in common where they can set up Stealth Rock, and he was very quick to set up Stealth Rocks. He definitely liked to set up Stealth Rocks in the beginning of his matches, so I think those were really good picks for him as well. One pick that we'll go into the individual Pokemon a little bit more later, but one of the picks that were really interesting was Wigglytuff. I was joking a lot about who was going to draft Wigglytuff, and he ended up actually doing just that. So that was pretty funny. Overall, his initial team had a lot of strong physical attackers. There were a couple of good special attackers too, but I think he definitely excelled in the physical side, especially considering his main sweeper was Mega Charizard X. And he also had a few good tricks up his sleeve with Mimikyu being able to take a hit, and even with Focus Sash take more than one hit, guaranteed, most of the time. So I think this was a pretty good draft, and I'll actually go into some of the individual Pokemon and some of the things that he mentioned to me about the individual Pokemon and how he used them later in the league. So we'll take a look at the battle record. He had some good wins, as you can see, +6, +6, and +5. And a lot of the times when he lost, it wasn't really by that big a differential. The biggest one was -6, but that was the default loss, the only default loss that happened in the league, actually. So not counting that, I think his record was pretty decent for his team, and he definitely put up a lot of very interesting matches and had a lot of tough opponents too, so we're going to look into that as well. The first match that Edgar fought was versus Bayside Divers. This was Sir Roland's team, and this was actually the first +6 win in the entire league. He managed to set the conditions for Umbreon to be able to sweep, and I believe those conditions were Skarmory and Mega Tyranitar both going down, so Umbreon could set up and go for the Curse Sweep. So that was really effective for him, and Umbreon was actually it was one of the contenders for first place in the first week MVP race. So Umbreon was really good for him here. I don't think he actually used Umbreon again after that. We'll take a look at that later. But yes, what he managed to do was take down Skarmory with Mega Charizard X, which was really important for Umbreon to be able to sweep, and also Mega Tyranitar with Registeel, and then Umbreon set up enough curses that it was impossible to take down and went for that sweep. Next we have Downtown Darmanitan. This was a loss, but a -2 loss, so it was relatively close. One of the big Pokemon that Edgar used was Mimikyu in spreading burns to the other team. Burn was actually an incredibly effective strategy versus Tiller's team being hyper offense, and it was really working for Edgar. The two places that Edgar managed, that Edgar wasn't able to overcome, was Mega Sharpedo. Actually, Generog was on track to be able to do massive damage to Tiller's remaining Pokemon, and it wasn't going to be taken out in one more hit by Mega Sharpedo. So what Mega Sharpedo actually did was use Destiny Bond, and that was really surprising. That was a very interesting play by Tiller. And the other thing was Barbaracle Shell Smash. Once Generog went down, Barbaracle was able to Shell Smash, and the remaining Pokemon weren't really able to take it down, Barbara the Barbaracle. So that was really the deciding factors in the end. But aside from that, Edgar actually really held his own, and it was pretty even with Edgar having some advantage in the beginning. So that was a very interesting match to see. Definitely one of the most interesting of the first 2 weeks. Next we have Canopy Defenders versus Dutch Inkays. This was versus Quest Requested's team, and this was the -4 loss. I think that Amoonguss was really one of the big thorns in Edgar's side in this one, with none of his Pokemon really able to break through Amoonguss, which is not the first team nor the last that had trouble breaking through Amoonguss. Amoonguss can be incredibly tough to deal with, and one of the other things that Quest did was using that Z Twinkle Tackle on Mantine, which was a one-hit KO. That Mantine was one of the key Pokemon in defending against Quest's team, so that was also a big barrier, and it was interesting to see Houndoom being used, though. I did like seeing that. Houndoom did manage to take out one of the opposing Pokemon. I believe it was Hitmonlee. It had to have been Hitmonlee or Rhydon, but I believe it was Hitmonlee. And Nihilego also being able to take out one of the opposing Pokemon. Moving forward, we have Appletun Legions versus Canopy Defenders. I think this was probably Edgar's best week. He did extremely well in this one, and he expressed that after the battle, actually, to me. Right in the beginning of the battle, right off the bat, Edgar managed to predict Camerupt was going to come out first, probably to set up Stealth Rock, and Crocodile was his answer to that. He actually equipped Crocodile with a Waterium Z, using Z Aqua Tail to take down Camerupt, even though it had Solid Rock. I'm not sure if it had Pass Ho Berry, but even if it did, I think that would have been enough to one-hit KO. So really impressive move by Edgar in that regard, and the battle just kept on going for him very effectively. He was able to use Registeel to kind of set up the conditions for Lilligant to come in, and once Lilligant got one Quiver Dance up, it was able to clean up very nicely after that. And Lady the Lilligant really showed that even though she's tier 5, She is not something to take for granted or underestimate. That's the word. So yeah, very strong performance by Edgar. Edgar, moving forward, did decide to make a couple changes to his team. He first traded Necrozma for Starmie, and something that he told me through the league multiple times was that he actually wasn't that comfortable using Necrozma. Necrozma is very nice on paper, but he wasn't very experienced using Necrozma and didn't really know how to use it effectively, whereas Starmie was a Pokemon that he was able to use very effectively and had some experience using and knew what it was capable of. So this was a very good trade for him in terms of his mindset and his familiarity and how Starmie fit in with the team. On top of that, Starmie is a very strong special attacker, and as I mentioned earlier, Edgar had a lot of really strong physical attackers. So a special attacker was definitely welcome. Starmie, especially having a wide move pool and given Z crystal access, so it was ready to wreck, and it was a very good addition to the team, in my opinion. Next, we have the other trade that Edgar did. This is the only other trade. Edgar traded Wigglytuff for Persian. Unfortunately, we never got to see Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff was a joke Pokemon that he drafted. Unfortunately, its typing, its stats, just don't allow it to do what it wants to do. Persian is definitely a little bit more of a sleeper tier 5. Not really super strong, doesn't have a strong offensive presence, but still has a few tricks up its sleeve, especially with Technician and its decently wide support move pool. So I think this was also a good choice in getting more serious moving forward. And the next battle was actually versus me, Mystical Chain. So in this battle, Edgar did extremely well. I think this was also one of his best performances, despite the fact that he lost. He only lost by a very thin margin. It was really close, and honestly, my Lotic was going to die next time it came in due to Stealth Rock. So it was really more like a +1 for me. But yeah, so he did extremely well in this one. I think the only reason I was able to clinch this one was Magneton with the Choice Scarf and Golbat being able to just do so much damage with Super Fang and Toxic and defending. But aside from that, and aside from Lycanroc Dusk's priority, I would have been toast. So he built a very strong team to take me on, very worthy adversary, and some of the stuff that he did, he used a lot of offense versus me, and I think that was a good move considering my Pokemon this time around were a little defensive. He managed to use Knockoff Crocodile to a very good in a very good way, knocking off Serena's Choice Scarf, which is something that I was very much banking on, and threatening Golbat, Piloswine, and Magneton, who all could have been holding Eviolite. Both, two of those were holding Eviolite. Magneton was holding Choice Scarf. So I think Crocodile was really his MVP in this, being able to knock off. And then Nihiligo with the Choice Scarf, if I didn't have priority, he would have won. So, very strong showing from Edgar. Next, Edgar went against the Canopy Defenders, and this one was a pretty intense match. Mega Swampert in the rain is not something that is to be taken lightly, for sure, and we see that again and again in this league. But I think that one of Edgar's mistakes was that he actually used Persian and forgot it was Choice Scarfed. So when he sent out Persian, he used Substitute, and then he was like, wait, I can't do anything else because I'm Choice Scarfed. And I believe he had that moveset to kind of trick Sartoad. But yeah, unfortunately, that blunder, I think, was not very good for him. It was a very interesting set, though, because he shared it with me. It had Substitute, I believe, Switcheroo, Icy Wind, and there was one more move. It might have been Swagger or Thunder Wave. I forgot exactly what it was. But it was supposed to be a support Persian that was able to trip up the team and put a Choice Scarf on something that didn't want it. So that would have been really cool to see if it was successful. And I think his other Pokemon that he was banking on was Lilligant. Unfortunately, Mega Swampert was able to Ice Punch it and really deal some big damage, so it was not able to do anything. So yes, I think this was a very tough opponent for him overall. Startoad has a very strong team. I've said this in many videos, but yes, this was a very tough opponent for him. Moving forward, it's Wooper Blooper versus Canopy Defenders. And this one was unfortunately the only match in the league that was not played. I was really curious as to how it would have gone if it was played. But yeah, so due to scheduling errors and because Edgar was not able to attend the scheduled time, it was a default loss to him with a -6 differential. Next, Edgar went up against Butcher Blisseys, and Mega Altaria was really the big threat in this one. So he really had to dance around that Mega Altaria, and I think he did it very effectively by using Registeel. I think Registeel, even though it didn't get as many kills as Mega Charizard did, it was, in my opinion, Edgar's MVP by being able to poison Mega Altaria and use Protect to stall out turns while its attacks and just pressure it so that it couldn't really do much. And it also did that versus Arcanine, surprisingly, Arcanine being very strong against Registeel, but Registeel really was that wall that was able to take hits and dish out the Toxics, setting up the perfect environment for Mega Charizard X to be able to sweep, and that's exactly what it did at the latter half of the game. Edgar did a really good job with that one, so I think this is a strong showing from him. And next we have the Star Conquerors versus Canopy Defenders. This match was really unfortunate because Edgar was set up with Mega Charizard, Gastrodon was taken down, and Mega Charizard was ready to sweep with its setup all there. He was ready to go for that 6-0, and then a Sucker Punch from Mega Absol hit Mega Charizard. It was a game-defining critical hit, and that took down Mega Charizard. So had it not been for that Sucker Punch critical hit, I think that Edgar might have been able to win that by a pretty large margin. But such is Pokemon, and despite that, Edgar did put up quite a good fight, being able to bring it down to the very last Pokemon. Nihilego doing a very good job in this one, Mimikyu being able to spread some burns as usual. Ferrothorn was the one who got burned. Unfortunately, with Mega Charizard X down, Ferrothorn was a lot harder for Edgar to take on, but it was still a very good game for Edgar, and he almost clinched it out despite having lost Mega Charizard early on in the match. Finally, we have Rio Grande Rapidash versus Canopy Defenders, and in this one, Virizion actually did really well for Rio Grande Rapidash. I think the biggest mistake that Edgar made in this one was that he switched in Mega Charizard X to X-Cloud's Boom Burst, and X-Cloud is definitely not a Pokemon that you want to take for granted, because Specs Boom Burst can take down even some pretty bulky Pokemon. So that one was a tough one, losing Mega Charizard X to a move without it even being able to move first. And yeah, that was one of the bigger moments that stood out to me. It still was a relatively even match for the fact that Edgar had Charizard taken out, but ultimately that was a little bit too much, and losing the main sweeper of the team really hurt. So overall, I want to go over Edgar's Pokemon now. Mega Charizard X was definitely his best Pokemon, I'd say, in the league. He was the main sweeper of the team and really the one who was able to rack up a ton of kills. So it did very well with a differential of plus 4. Umbreon did well for Edgar when he used it, but he only used it once. So I want to see. I would have wanted to see Umbreon and how it did more. Lilligant only used twice, also did very well. The only times the first time it was used. The second time, unfortunately, Mega Swampert took it out, but the first time it was used did extremely well. And then we have Houndoom and Nihilego, both doing relatively well. Houndoom only used twice, Nihilego used a little bit more. Mantine is next. Edgar actually said that Mantine was probably the only Pokemon he regretted picking due to the fact that it was very passive, and I think that's something that he didn't want on his team because it kind of stole some of the momentum from Mega Charizard or Crocodile or those other Pokemon that were a little bit more offensive and wanted to keep on maintaining that offensive pressure. Persian, after the Choice Scarf, was only used once. I wonder how he would have used Persian later on, but it's not really that strong a Pokemon, so I'm not surprised that he only used Persian once. Registeel used many times, very much a strong wall. Its differential doesn't show it, but it was able to wall a lot of Pokemon and spread Toxic, which was really important for Edgar in this league. Garchomp and Crocodile, both the tanky Stealth Rock setters that can hit very hard as well. I think Edgar definitely liked using them, sometimes using both on the same team. Usually he picked one or the other, but sometimes he had both, and I think that he used them pretty effectively to tank hits and deal out big damage again. Even though they didn't have a lot of KOs, they did manage to deal out a lot of damage. Starmie and Mimikyu are in the lower end of the differential. I think that Mimikyu, he used it a little bit more to spread burns than to outright sweep. So that's probably why Mimikyu's differential is the lowest, because it wasn't going for the sweep as much as it was in that support position. And then, of course, Wigglytuff never used. Rest in peace. Very sad about that, but it was funny that he drafted it at all in the first place. So that was an OG moment. And before our match, we actually had an all Wigglytuff match, which was really funny. Wigglytuff Metronome only, and I believe he won that one. So yeah, that was a really fun time, and I think Edgar definitely had some good moments in this league, and I'm really happy he joined. Overall, Edgar, he had experience in Pokemon before, playing as a Dark type gym leader in a Pokemon Online Gym League Challenge. And I think that also explains why he had 3 Dark types on his team. Dark type is probably his most comfortably used type due to that, and just because he uses a lot of Dark types. And like we saw in the win-loss records, when he won big. He definitely had a groove that he got when he was on his winning streaks, and he was able to put up some tough matches, especially versus some of the higher ranked players. So I'm really glad he was able to join, and just in general, I'm really glad he was able to join. He's been wanting to do Pokemon stuff on the server for a while, and I hope that this was a fun little introduction into Pokemon stuff on the server, because yeah, it's really fun playing Pokemon with him. He was one of the first people on the server that I started playing Pokemon with, and it was really enjoying. It was enjoyable. Can you tell I'm tired? It was really enjoyable, and we were able to do the Pokemon Bank battles, which I very much liked. So thank you so much, Edgar, for joining the league and for participating, and I really hope that we continue doing Pokemon battles and that we get to see more of your growth and some of those really cool moments where you really get into the groove and you have this really cool flow going through. I really liked my match with Edgar in particular. I thought it was very intense, and Edgar put up one of the best fights against me, I think. So definitely looking forward to what more Edgar has in store, and really happy that he was able to join us. So yeah, that was Canopy Defenders, and tune in for some team analysis videos coming soon. Now we are going to go into the playoffs and look at how some of the playoff contestants are doing, or how they did rather, because this will be after they complete all their matches. So stay tuned for that. And until then, I'll see you.